Leslie and your other employees, they work really, really hard to put this event together. So they were extremely professional, and I truly appreciate that we had a great communication also with you, Teresa. Well, I want to tell you that yes, you were extremely brave, because even Lviv is located in the western part of Ukraine. Bombs are flying there, okay? So there are constant attacks on Lviv, on the infrastructure, so it's not completely safe. Nowhere is safe in Ukraine. Second, to open a company in a country that suffers such a war, such an invasion, such a brutal invasion and massive invasion, because previous wars, usually you would have some kind of attack and then it would be period like months of quiet time. And again, attack and quiet time. Well, Ukraine is attacked daily, sometimes 70, 60 attacks per day. So there is no quiet time. So to open a company in a country that suffers under the war, and the common economy is actually, it's just some kind of miracle, it was extremely brave. So for me, it was like a philanthropy act that you invest into something that logically, and you know, if you really do calculated decision, probably wouldn't have chance to survive, but nevertheless, you do it, you take a chance. It was really brave, but it was very also generous, because as the ambassador said, the company is working. It actually has significant meaning and significant, it is significant for Ukrainian economy and the Ukrainian military. It pays taxes that supports Ukrainian economy, employs Ukrainian people that are able to support their families, and from their salaries, they also, I'm sure, donate to Ukrainian army. So from every point, it is an incredible story that I hope will get the news and show example of other companies that even at the time of war, if you take a risk and invest in Ukraine, we all believe in Ukraine, we will win this war together. But after the war, I'm sure many more companies will come, but you were one of the first, and you always will be remembered, like the company and the leader of the company who believed in Ukraine at the time when Ukraine was at its hardest time. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I can assure you that, you know, most of you guys know that often I do things without thought, so I wouldn't give you too much credit for bravery over there. So I think, and my perspective on that was this: both times when I went to visit, second time in Lviv, in central Lviv, in the center of the city, you know, people made a huge fuss, big fuss about my attendance there. But to me, it was undeserved, remains undeserved. But thank you for the kind words. The reason I say that is because our staff, our colleagues who are extraordinary engineers and do great work under pressure, just like our folks here do, absent the inbound rockets and mortars here. But nevertheless, they're extraordinarily talented. But as I visited, and people, we use crude oil from in Kyiv, and they had folks make the trip from Kyiv to Lviv to visit with me. And I can tell you this, I didn't feel brave, I felt humble, because the folks that are brave are the people that live there every day. They're under fire every day, under threat every day. They're families, and a couple of our employees have relatives that are in the fight. So to me, those are the folks that deserve the recognition. People that daily have to confront the disruption of their lives, the brutality of the invader, the continuous assault nightly. And I think there's if I have this correctly, and we'll talk about this a little bit, it's dramatic what's happening there, often because of the skills and bravery of particularly everybody, but particularly Ukrainian computer scientists and electrical engineers. This is really the first modern crowdsourced war in terms of technical folks, regular folks, using their skills to bring capability to the battlefield almost daily. It's a very, very new way of fighting, and it's shocking the world. Like, you know, we're an American defense contractor. We know how hard it is to get on contract. You know, everything was a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. Well, several years ago, you know, we're forward thinking here. We're doing drones, and with Don Gilbreth, we're doing drone swarms. And I had this idea, it's probably 5 years ago now, to put explosives on drones. And we talked to folks in the US military, and they said, well, yeah, that'll take 3 years of safety testing. You know, just to see how, you know, is that a bad thing to put an explosive on a drone? Well, here it is in Ukraine. I mean, guys are zip tying grenades to drones, right? And dropping them down open Russian hatches and stuff. You know, if they get an idea in the morning, it's tested on the battlefield by lunch.
You don't have time otherwise.
Right. Well, no, that's right. You don't have a 5-year plan.
No.
Right now. So what's happening is it's flowing back into the U.S. and Western militaries that the way we've done things historically will no longer work. We don't have 5 years to work on a project, 10 years to work on a project. This battlefield changes daily. When I'm talking about crowdsourcing, I think you have kind of a Maps, a Waze kind of app that people have on their phone that gives them alerts for inbound missiles and drones and rockets. You know, and that was basically created. There wasn't an order from President Zelensky to build that.
No, that actually a little bit. What actually was a huge difference between the Ukrainian army and Russian army? The Russian army functions on the old Soviet system. Okay, top down. So the down, those ones who are down, they have no authority. They actually would be severely punished if they will do a step left or right. With Ukrainians, they had to have this kind of authority to act under the circumstances because there was no way around. They sometimes didn't have communication. Often they didn't have communication. So they had to be creative. And that actually also allowed civil engineers, people who work in with all kind of computer skills and everything, just started to invent things the way how they are, because some women in Kyiv, they were, you know, killing drones with the jars of pickles, but that wouldn't work actually all the time. So, but the civil society really came into help, and they invented a lot of things that they were working like that quickly.
Right, so that pace, you know, we see it, you know, here, how slow we are. And we've had the advantage in the U.S. of being the dominant player on the battlefield. And I'm going to tell you since when. No American unit has come under fire from the air since, I think, 1952 in Korea. So we have dominated the airspace and assumed the dominated airspace for almost 72 years now. And that's embedded in our military culture, it's embedded in our thinking that we own the air. What's happened in Ukraine has shown that nobody owns the air, that you will be attacked from, and think about what we do. Steve was deployed internationally. Our CRAM technology was deployed in giant FOBs, forward operating bases, things that are many square miles, thousands and thousands of soldiers bivouacked on a large forward operating base. Well, what the Russians have shown is that when you have a large forward operating base in an era of drone activity, you're all going to die. Every single Russian installation of any size since the first few weeks of the war has come under attack. Most have been destroyed. They've lost more generals and colonels and high-ranking officers than any military really since World War II.
You know why? Because their generals would always be riding in the second car in the column all the time for the first 6 months of war. So our guys, they didn't have enough weapons or ammunition, but they were always shooting the second car and would always eliminate them. So that's how it was.
That's right. So So our whole methodology of procurement, weapons design, our doctrines for fighting are all going to have to change because of what's been demonstrated in particular by the Ukrainian side. Now, of course, the Russians have had time. They're learning as well. You know, they're learning specimen on the battlefield. But what we're seeing, it will affect what we're doing, whether it's the use of artificial intelligence on the battlefield, the use of drones in swarm on the battlefield, the way that the weapons are applied, all is dramatically changing. So from us as a company, we'll have to react to that, and in many ways we already are. Our team in Ukraine with their work on the Edge artificial intelligence device, and then locally Steve Pappas and team working on different types of radios. All of that is a direct result of what's being applied in real time on the battlefield today. And then there's something in the military called the OODA loop, right? Which is, I think it's observe, orient, decide, and act. And every military operation involves this loop, which is the time from observation to decision and action. And the U.S. has dominated the OODA loop really since the early 50s, from a soldier doctrine perspective to a weapons development perspective. But what we have now is a dramatically accelerated OODA loop. And what that means, and where OODA loop came from is a Colonel Boyd, an Air Force American Air Force pilot in 1948, and he was an ace in World War II, and he was really driven to figure out why some pilots are better than other pilots. So he did endless analysis of dogfighting films from World War II, and what he found out is there's the two pilots in combat each have a decision-making process that they're utilizing, and that the pilot that continually can observe, orient, decide, and act slightly faster than his opponent in a few of those loops, because his opponent's making a loop and he's making a loop slightly faster. After a few iterations, the winning pilot puts himself in a position where he can dominate the fight. And so what's happening in Ukraine right now is this endless OODA loop of product development, tactics, techniques at the front, and it's being tested in real time. And if you get beat, you get dead. So all of that's going on, the drama of that, but also the dynamics of that, is flowing back to what we have to address as a company in our activities with the U.S. military. So we push hard here, and everybody here reacts very well to lots of pressure. But that's what's going on, and I think we're beginning to see some appreciation of how we do things being recognized by some folks in the military. But the real laboratory for this takes place in your home country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.